Hello, and welcome to R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm your host, Valerie King, R&R's editor-in-chief, and I'm joined today by Brandon Donatelli, Chief Revenue Officer with Homey. Homey is a technology platform for connecting insurers, policyholders, and skilled service providers in the claims process. And Brandon is a familiar face within the industry as he has more than 2 decades of experience with both insurance and restoration. Now, most recently, before joining Homey in January, Brandon served as VP of Corporate Accounts with CoreLogic and NextGear Solutions. Prior to that, he was Global Director of Insurance Accounts at Matterport. And before that, he worked on the contractor side with a few restoration companies. Not to mention, he also served as a firefighter at the start of his career. So it goes without saying, Brandon has amassed a great deal of relevant knowledge and experience for restorers to glean takeaways from. That's as a fellow contractor, a technology vendor, an insurance side vendor, and first responder serving policyholders in moments of loss. Now, adopting new technology is a top 5 challenge area among restoration companies, and that's according to R&R's 2021 State of the Industry report. So we're going to spend most of our time today on that topic. It happens to be a passion area of Brandon's, and he spent a lot of time thinking about tech through the lens of restorers, insurers, and policyholders. So I am looking forward to his take on top challenges, how to address them, and of course, what's on the horizon for the industry in this age of digital transformation. Thank you so much for joining me, Brandon.
Thank you for having me, Valerie. That's a mouthful. I often look back at my career. I don't realize where, so many places I've been and how it got me here to where I'm at today. It's interesting. It's quite the journey.
Quite the journey, and oh so relevant to this industry in so many ways. I think that's very intriguing. That noted, I actually, as long as that took, I really sped through your career highlights in my intro. So could you do your experience a little more justice by summarizing your journey through your eyes from firefighter to where you are today with Homey?
Yeah, absolutely. So my career started in my hometown of Chicago, and shortly after college, I did like most of my family did. You become a police officer or a firefighter, and I went down the firefighting path. So my early education was in fire science, and quickly learned and developed an interest in building and building management. So I took a few courses, initially started off on sort of an architectural path, and quickly realized that I wanted to be more in the developer or general contracting role and, really be involved in the building process and, physically directly aligned with the boots on the ground. So my career, went through the fire service, and like most firefighters, I began a business doing general contracting, which quickly turned into restoration. And, nearly a decade into firefighting and managing that aspect of my career, I was faced with the challenge of, I've got this, growing business and restoration that's doing phenomenal. I had a big family, and I made a tough decision leaving the fire service and going full-time into restoration, which is really where my history starts. I did a little time. I worked for Allstate for a very short period on the catastrophe team in Chicago in the early 90s. So I was part of like that close down unit that shut down Hurricane Andrew, for anyone on the call that remembers that. And that was my first experience with insurance and restoration, kind of understanding that industry or our industry as a whole. And so through a number of interesting events, here I am. I ended up, in technology after, being in restoration firsthand, understanding all of those moments when a loss occurs and all the parts of the process that get us to this point. And largely, I really had a love and passion for using technology to help manage that experience from a restoration perspective originally. And now I've sort of, through Matterport and now at Homey, I'm working on a solution that I think is really bridging the gap between carriers and vendors to be able to deliver even better solutions for property owners after their time of loss.
All right. So for those who are not familiar, what is Homey? How does it relate to the restoration industry? And what's your main focus as Chief Revenue Officer?
So first and foremost, Homey is a technology-led software solution that connects carriers to vendors. So we have a huge network of pros that are in the restoration industry, as well as single trade and more specialty trades like plumbers and HVAC, mechanical type individuals. So we have a direct line to a vendor or supply chain of individuals, especially right now with this great resignation we're dealing with and so many companies just being shorthanded. We're tapping into a much larger market of trades and individuals that are able to come help resolve an insurance claim for a carrier, for an insured, even support and assist a TPA or managed repair network to help supplement their capacity challenges, as well as restoration contractors. So in a number of different capacities, we are a technology connecting to a number of different labor needs that may exist out in the world, but really focused on insurance. So we're an insure tech first, but really largely looking at taking and streamlining the claims process. So really massively reducing cycle times, which is better for everyone. Starting with the policyholder first, the customer journey through that loss is really critically important. But while carriers are interested in cycle times being as short as possible, we know the longer a claim stays open, the more expensive it gets for everyone, the more frustration, the lower the customer satisfaction. So by tapping directly into a trade or labor channel that allows us to get out of the constraints of the traditional restoration channels, we're able to produce a much quicker, much timelier cycle time that's just favorable for everybody. So we think that's pretty exciting. My initial and primary goal, I think, as the Chief Revenue Officer here, is to finish the process that I think Homey started a few years ago when they really dove into the insurtech industry and really becoming an insurance first solution. So we're doing a bit of rebranding. We're working on a lot of our value proposition repositioning and getting a lot of the messaging around who Homey is and what we do reintroduced out to the industry. And I think it's a pretty exciting endeavor. I'm looking forward to many of the challenges that come with and I think there's a lot of need in the industry. So I'm really excited about I think what we can do to maybe change not just Homey, but change the way a managed repair solution works within our industry.
That's a really helpful description. It's interesting to hear how you are connecting the dots between the insurance side and restoration and beyond on the trade side in the service of the policyholder. So ready to dive more into technology, as we talked about at the start of this. The state of tech in the restoration industry, kind of a big umbrella, but curious, how would you kind of sum up the state of technology and restoration if you had to explain it in a nutshell?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I think our industry is really maturing in the sense that we're seeing good utilization of technology. What we have right now is a little challenging because we have all this incredible technology, but we don't have a single platform that brings it all together really well. So the challenges creates, and you hear people grumble this all the time, it's, oh my gosh, another app I have to learn, another software solution I'm gonna have to figure out and get trained on and certified. And I think what we're seeing starting to occur in the industry is sort of like everything in our industry, we're seeing all this consolidation occurring. Same thing with software and technology. We're beginning to see the nuts and bolts of really good solutions start to get integrated and working together. So no longer having the need to learn 5 systems, go out and find one technology platform that's incorporating these different technology advances. And then you're only learning one primary system, but you're getting all the advantages of all the nuts and bolts that are floating around out in the industry. I think it's exciting. And I think it's interesting because, again, I go back to the big topic these days is our shortage of labor, qualified, skilled individuals that can perform more, better and faster. So one of the concerns everyone always has around technology is this eliminate human capital. Do we not need people anymore? And the reality is we're going to need people. And we're learning right now with the, workflow constraints that we're dealing with, industry is like every other industry, we're experiencing shortages in labor. So while technology is really making incredible advances, it's not yet a situation of replacing human capital, right? We're still in a situation where we need to see people enjoying doing their jobs, using tools that help them do their jobs more effectively. Machines and technology can do mundane tasks, but they're not going to get on a phone and have a sensitive phone call with an insured or policyholder. And I think when you give technology the space it needs to kind of eliminate the old analog steps that occur out in the industry, it opens up the ability for us to really bring the human element that we can't automate and do it better and do more of it. And oddly enough, most individuals enjoy doing the human side of the work. It's the mundane tasks that everyone hates or just doesn't enjoy.
That's really helpful. Okay, so layering on to that, you talked about kind of human capital, where that connects. You talked about, human capital, the labor shortage. Thinking of competitiveness within the landscape of technology, particularly following CoreLogic's acquisition of Next Gear Solutions in September 2021, which you were there at that point. I've heard there's a more competitive situation than ever in the software ecosystem within restoration. Do you agree with that? If so, what does that mean for contractors? Do you not agree? What's your take there on competitiveness in the landscape of tech in restoration?
Yeah, I mean, look, competition is good for business. If we want to be on the leading edge, cutting edge of innovation, we need to be competitive. And competition is what really drives just greater better technology and better solutions. So it's exciting to see. Interestingly enough, with CoreLogic acquiring NextGear and going through that process and looking what that does out in the industry, kind of going back to my the previous question, I think it's an interesting situation because if you're a carrier, it's competitive now because there's now another competitive estimatic solution with Stability and Claim Connect, and where you historically were seeing Verisk owning 80+% of the market share, you're going to start seeing that pendulum shift now a little bit back to where we're seeing CoreLogic competing in, I think, a really meaningful way, and really being in I think at the moment, a slightly higher competitive advantage because I think they've got some newer solutions that are going to have a little bit better capability to integrate rapidly and really bring the capability to deliver the transparency I think that everybody wants to see in insurance. That's really critically important. But in addition to that, it doesn't necessarily create the competition for the vendors and for the contractors like you would think. It's just adding one more thing on the plate. It's another software expense because as a contractor or a vendor, you can't choose one or the other. If you're dealing with a carrier that you want to do continued repeat business with, and they happen to use, CoreLogic's solution, and everybody in our industry tends to use Verisk and Xactimate, it creates a challenge because now you have to incorporate two systems. You have to train your people, you have to learn both, you have to pay for both. And I think there's going to be some interesting developments out in the industry that allow a little more ubiquity in the way that vendors operate. And I think there's higher and bigger than ever, there's a desire from carriers to really kind of get out of like the price book constraints that are created by either one of these two. What are the market rates? What are the street, what's the street cost to do repairs? And what does that look like? And there seems to be high interest. The verdict isn't in yet on whether or not there's cost advantages, whether it's for greater profitability for contractors or lower cost and lower loss adjusting expense maybe for carriers. But I think the players that are going to really stand out right now are the ubiquitous ones that tend to work with everybody, that build their systems to be highly integratable and allow interaction so that you don't have to be one or the other. And I think that's really the world as a whole, I think, is moving towards greater transparency in that, data knowledge and data interchangeability, I think, is really important. So, yeah, great question. I mean, a big topic right now.
Yes, I really like the way you brought that together and shared your perspective from a lot of different angles, working with the insurance side, what the future may hold, where the interest is. And yeah, so I'm curious, knowing that technology is a key challenge among restoration companies, why do you think that is? Why do you think it's a pain point for the industry? You keep talking about the importance of integration, the fact that it's not exactly necessarily where it ought to be. It's kind of tough to pick from so many options. They don't necessarily all work together. Is that what's so hard? Is there more to that perspective you have?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, Valerie, I think there's a challenge for software companies. We don't have a lot of software companies in the insurance space or in the restoration space, so to speak, today. You'd be surprised. Other industries have far many more options than we do in our industry. So we don't really realize it. We kind of have our blinders on and only see what's in front of us. But the reality is these software solutions, continue to, I think they're all improving, but they need to continue to innovate and develop new ways to work and, act interchangeably so that, you and I might have a certain appetite or flavor for a user experience with one or the other. They all ultimately do the same things, and they have different strengths and weaknesses, and we see that. So interestingly enough, I think as you start to see the more sophisticated software solutions come to the table that really kind of have a lot of strengths and solve more of the problems, they're starting to recognize the value of interacting with other somewhat competitive solutions out in the industry that maybe have different strengths or weaknesses that really plug in nicely and play well together, so that the advantage then becomes for the restorer to be able to take advantage of all the strengths of each of the different software solutions that exist out in the industry. So again, I keep coming back to, instead of having a highly competitive, environment, can we have more of a, cooperative, to where we're really, look, there can be different software solution providers, but the better we all play together, the better solutions we're providing for the ultimate, policyholder or property owner that we're serving in the industry. And that's important. And when we all play nice in the sandbox, I think it's a better experience for everybody, and everyone does better.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So digging deeper into this challenge area, with tech, I'm wondering, in your time as a tech vendor from Matterport to NextGear and CoreLogic, what maybe were some of the common tech-related challenges you saw among restorers, whether it's questions they tended to ask you, missteps you maybe saw them make? Could you share a few examples?
Yeah, Matterport was an interesting one because it's a great technology, and I think everybody saw the value of it. But I often got asked certain questions about how to use it, how to incorporate it. So many people looked at technology and said, well, this is a great solution for a large loss, but my daily, everyday small losses, maybe it's a little too timely. And one of the things that I encourage, business owners and individuals that are making decisions on software solutions and what they're going to incorporate into their operations is to really understand what it is that they want to accomplish. The big factor today in insurance is documentation. And everything we talk about with technology really revolves around either gathering documentation as accurately and timely as possible, or delivering and conveying, sharing that information back and forth between the different stakeholders in the process. So I think when you talk about technology and the solutions and challenges that the vendors have out in the space, understand what it is that you want to accomplish. Really think about where your business is today, but where you want to be in 5 or 10 years. And when we talk about technology, you need to think about the trajectory of your business. And if you think your business is in a growth stage, which many of the businesses I talk to are constantly growing, and we know if you're not growing, you're kind of going backwards, you're going to get left behind. So if you're growing your business and you're looking at technology and solutions, you need to think about, it's complex. Who's going to be managing the software in my organization, and what are their capabilities and their skill sets? What are the needs I need the software to produce for me, and how's it going to make my people more efficient or more effective? And when you start asking good questions like this, all of a sudden the choices out in the industry the net starts to narrow down to a few options. And then I think that the options become very clear in what owners or operators need to choose for their solutions. One of the big factors I think we just touched on previously was how well do they play with other software providers? So when you're choosing a solution, it's important to understand if I can integrate and I can use this information. For example, if I'm using NextGear, I use Dash, and I work with a carrier that works with Verisk and Exact, and I'm doing program work. It's really nice that NextGear has a deep integration with Exact and Verisk, and it's able to work within the Exact environment, as well as its home now at CoreLogic. It's integrated with Claims Connect. So when you're doing work, you're uploading documentation, you're documenting field notes. It's not duplicate entry. It's being conveyed and sent through different channels to all the different software platforms that need to have it. So without getting too deep into the functional capabilities of different software solutions out in the industry, I think the point being larger, or the bigger issue here is make those decisions based on what your needs are, based on who's responsible for performing the work and utilizing that software, and where you want to be in 3 to 5 or 10 years from now. And very quickly, it becomes obvious what solutions you need to choose.
That's super helpful. So it sounds like a lot of what you may hear and have heard over the years really starts at the beginning, which maybe some of this could have been mitigated if you really intentionally thought about what you were investing in to begin with.
Well, absolutely. And, I think about it and it's challenging because you have all these different businesses and they're jockeying for market share and getting buyers, right? So the problem is you're out there trying to do your research and make a decision that's best for you. And when you talk to those companies, they all want your business. So it makes it even more challenging to determine why one might be better than the other. But I encourage buyers to really look at the pros and cons of a software solution and vet them against one another. When you're speaking to an account rep or somebody at one of those software solution providers, if they're providing really good consultative discovery sessions with you to understand what your needs are and to really kind of solution sell, they're going to really help you make a better understanding for what solution works best for you. And it sometimes might not be their solution. And I know firsthand, working with a few of the companies out there that we talked about here just a few minutes ago, I know they're good, honest solution providers, and they want customers that are going to get huge value from their solution. So I think the hardest thing that software companies need to do is recognize, one, they either need to do a better job of training and educating their buyers, or two, they need to be honest that when they identify somebody might not be a great fit for them, it's okay to not have everybody in the business your client or customer. So occasionally you have to let people know the other option might be a better choice for you, and that's okay.
Very helpful. You talked a lot about, thinking through that initial investment. How on earth do I make this decision in the software I may be looking at for my restoration company now and into the future? I'm wondering what your take is on making sure once I've paid this money, or I continue to, however that investment works in this software as a restoration business leader, I got it. It really does seem like the right fit for my company, but now I need to make sure it actually goes to work, that the employees adopt it, that it's used properly. What advice could you maybe share with listeners on that part, the implementation, the successful implementation of these technology solutions so that they really do reap ROI?
Yeah, right. So ROI is the most important factor, I think, when you invest in software. But what's really critically important for a software launch to be effective at a company is, and I hope I don't offend anyone here, but I know a lot of the restoration owners and operators maybe were using relevant software that's 10 years old. And today, the software landscape changes every few years. I mean, it's a 2 or 3 year cycle before we're seeing massive overhauls and the constituent software providers, and then all kinds of new software solutions, coming online every day. And when you have all these choices and solutions, as an owner and the decision maker and ultimate responsible, investor in the solution, it's hard to make choices that are ideal for your team. But you want to make selections that do yield high ROI. If you're investing in software, the first thing I tell individuals to think about is you need to think about software in the same way you think about an employee. And if the average employee in a restoration firm is going to be around $70,000 or $80,000 annually, and that's for like an entry-level starting employee, the more sophisticated and skilled staff are over $100,000 a year. Now, if I'm purchasing a software solution that's going to make one individual 3, 4, or 5x more efficient, put the dollars and cents math to that. If one employee is a 6-figure investment annually, and I'm investing in a software solution that makes one individual 3 or 4 or 5 times more efficient, is it unreasonable to think that a good software solution might be a 6-figure investment annually? Because at the end of the day, it needs to do what maybe 2 or 3 employees would normally do on their own. So when I have a shortage of labor, available individuals that are skilled and capable to come into my organization, there's a shortage of them out in the industry. I can't find good people to come to work for me. Investing in software enables me to take my already existing employees and make them more effective so that I don't necessarily need as many people. Not looking to replace people or let people go. We're looking to make the existing trained and capable, skilled individuals 3 and 4 and 5x more functional. And that's where I think many software solution shoppers fail to recognize or realize what software really means to their business. Big business gets it. big companies understand the value and importance of good solutions. Small businesses don't always have the budget for it, but at some point in your business, I think once you're doing north of $1 million in revenue annually, you need to look at your software investment just like you look at your employee investment. And it should be probably equally cost-wise, what you're spending on staff.
Very helpful framing of that through the lens of the biggest challenge everybody's facing right now is staffing, but also it's hard. It's tough to make a really big investment, but making that being key, spending the money to make the return. Okay. So looking ahead, I'm really excited. Go ahead.
One more point. I don't mean to cut you off, but just
please.
As you said that, it occurred to me to just finish off answering that question for you. Obviously, you get you make the choice, you invest in good software. What I find with software is the more costly solutions aren't more expensive because they necessarily do it better. They're more expensive because they employ a huge team of individuals to ensure your success, meaning they have really in-depth training and they offer a multitude of training options, self-serve training, in-person on-site training, virtual training, and they try from 5 different angles to make sure that you have a high success rate in terms of using the software solution. That's what you're investing in a partnership with the software solution provider is a good support staff that's going to help you train and teach your people to use the solution at the highest possible level. And that's the best outcome for them as well, is because you get a big return on your investment then. So when you're choosing a software solution provider, you need to focus on not just what the software solution it does, but how are they going to train you and your staff and what's included in the cost I'm paying so I get the most out of my investment. And I think that caps off your question a little bit more succinctly with what you were looking for.
Yeah, that's a really helpful answer. And I appreciate you explaining it more as a partnership and an ongoing, not transactional. I bought this stuff from you. Thanks. But you're here to help me along the way and get me kicked off with this with really thorough, solid training and support. Thank you. Okay. So looking ahead, I know you've expressed passion and excitement around advancements in technology in past conversation. So near future, near term, wondering what key technology trends you anticipate related to the restoration industry, maybe this year or things that stand out.
Yeah, so again, I think the theme of the discussion today is that integration capability, right? As we start to see really awesome solutions like take a foothold in the industry, things like virtual capture. I mentioned Matterport, but you've got a number of other solutions out there that are equally gaining ground in terms of being a cost-effective solution. And really, at the end of the day, they're solving the documentation dilemmas. How do we get the most accurate and usable documentation that can help both insurers, vendors, and policyholders solve their claim dilemma, right? And as we start to really move forward, we're seeing those partnerships and those integrations starting to occur. So now you see great capability to be able to make something like your Matterport scan a repository for all the critical claim information. So as we're maybe doing a virtual walkthrough of the space, we want to look at a notes or we want to look at a matter tag and we want to dive deeper into the claim, we can take our other software solutions right into that virtual walkthrough and document more, more deeply, understand the space and the process, during the period of restoration a little bit more clearly. And I think you're starting to see a convergence of spatial data, both on the exterior and the interior of buildings, start to come together. The entire industry was so excited about virtual walkthroughs and doing that capture on the interior of space. And solution providers like Hover and a lot of the Eagle View and the aerial providers out there that are providing some of that exterior imagery. I think the exciting new technology is going to be closing the envelope or sealing it in, so getting a full outside in on a property. So we can really look at the impact or effect of, say, a storm claim that blows shingles off a roof, then causes secondary ensuing water damage on the interior. An inside scan of that property alone isn't adequate. There's damage to the exterior as well. So I think the ability to create a virtual scan that really allows us to look at the property from the aerial view right in through to the interior of the walls and on the interior of the space to understand the full impact of the damage caused from the storm is going to be a really exciting technology. The other side of that coin, as I start to believe, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more wearable technology continue to come to the forefront and actually get utilized. I know in the restoration industry, it's not happening like it should yet, but there's a number of eyewear providers out there that are putting some really awesome heads-up display capabilities into safety goggles, safety glasses, right? So I really think that we should be looking at that. It's picking up in places like Europe and Asia, the US, where we're typically a leader. We're a little bit behind on the curve on this one. And I think it's a really highly functional technology that we're going to start seeing. And when we make the move to wearables, it opens up the discussion about mobile technology. We all carry around an iPhone or a really high-end Android device. It's in the palm of our hands. So I think the direction of the industry is really moving to mobile, where we're going to start seeing everything is almost like mobile first, and then having a desktop experience to maybe, facilitate processing or that integration and sharing of data and information. But I think in the near future, you're going to be seeing 90+% of documentation gathered off a mobile device. And I think that's a pretty compelling statement about, companies in the software industry in the space, and companies like Homey and companies like other repair solutions out there in the network, using mobile first applications to share, gather documentation and convey or, disseminate it across the stakeholders in the experience as well.
That was a really colorful and yes, really exciting list of what may be on the horizon and what you're seeing needs for and delivery of what's being worked on the software side. Anything else you'd like to add in terms of predictions longer term, or is that summing up your thoughts on what might be to come?
Yeah, I think what we see on the horizon, so to speak. I'm not big on, I'm a big Nostradamus fan, but in terms of predictions, I mean, I think it's inevitable. We're seeing higher frequency of storms and events occurring. So I think we're going to continue to see some pretty considerable events. It's been, although we've had high volume, I think it's been a while since we've seen any major events. And I don't want to be a doomsday, alarmist, so to speak, but I think we're on the verge. We saw in Colorado, some fires hit some really heavily populated areas. And largely when we see wildfire occurring, it tends to be out in more wilderness areas and, kind of hitting communities on the outskirts. I think there's a high likelihood we're going to start seeing a little bit more intense activity in much more, higher populated areas. And then the big factor, I don't think anyone's completely, prepared for, and it's not just in California on the West Coast, but I think we're seeing a lot of seismic shifts happening as well. And I think that, we need to start thinking about earthquake preparedness again, and really considering the idea that we are way overdue for a considerable event in areas that don't normally have it. I think we're seeing a lot more seismic activity occurring as well. So I think there's a lot of education needed in understanding structural integrity and some of the issues that we're going to face with that. So just a little bit of a, get ready. I think we've got some exciting new perils to deal with out in the industry that we all need to get prepared for and start thinking about. And like everything else in the industry, I believe we're going to continue to see big market consolidation in all segments of the industry is going to continue as we potentially, I think, enter into a recession right now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And the world's been an interesting place. How do you close out a pandemic? By looking at, we're on the precipice of another massive global war occurring here that could be pretty considerable. And I think the one thing we can say for sure is the future is completely uncertain.
That was really well put. Wow. Okay. So we've talked about the future and cutting edge tools. I'm wondering on the flip side, are there any not so new, not so cutting edge technology solutions that you may deem of great value for restoration?
Yeah, well, I already mentioned it, but we keep overlooking the mobile device, right? The phones that are in your pockets, right? I mean, at this point now, we're 20 years into, mobile devices. And I think there's going to be crazy developments around what we're doing with our mobile tools between the smartwatches we wear, the glasses we're wearing, and our mobile connectivity. I think that's pretty incredible. And I think there's, a lot to be done with some of the old reliable technology we're using, those phones that we have in our system. 5G has been in the news lately, and that's a big issue in terms of understanding how our infrastructure is going to change and the impacts that that's going to have out on industry. And I think it's ultimately all good, but there's going to be some growing pains. Evolution, I kind of told someone the other day on the phone that was like, wow, this is like really disruptive things you're saying, Brandon. Like what's going on here? And he said, well, it's our old mindsets of analog thinking are going truly digital. And to really understand in the most simplest of terms what that is look at if your keystrokes on a keyboard or clicking your mouse, it's analog. Digital is automation. It's not just having a computer and technology perform the work, but it's actually automating it. So really, when we talk about all this and going back even further than the mobile phone, I think we have some mindset changes to make with the most important tool, right? And I think when we get our brains and our mindset wrapped around what digital really means, our trust and the credibility of automation and machine learning and computer vision and all the cool things we're seeing applied to technology now to make it even more effective, we need to start really wrapping our minds around what digitization looks like and learning, understanding what automation is and how it works so that we can really get our mindsets working in a more digital format.
Thank you for that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And thinking about how you're taking it a step further back from the tools themselves to us as humans, maybe that's a good segue into my next question. In that I'm wondering, based on your experience at this intersection of restoration contractors and the claims industry, which is so important, but can be dynamic and complex and really challenging. Any perspective on ways that both stakeholders on the restoration side and on the insurance side could better work together in the interest of the policyholders? Maybe that's technology, maybe that's more fundamental, but just wondered what your take might be there.
So yeah, again, I think technology is the secret sauce here, right? With technology, a couple things are happening. We're learning, and I say this respectfully, carriers have the same challenges that restoration owners have as well, right? It's a human factor. It isn't a matter of being good or bad or positive or negative or honest or dishonest. We make errors as humans, and there's a fairly, decent ability to judge what the delta is on human error rates. And that's where we want to be applying technology. When we use things like, scanning spaces and getting spatial data and utilizing the measurement capability that's digitized, it's like single digit accurate. Whereas with most individuals, using a measuring tape or a laser device, really qualified individuals that do it on a daily basis, from one individual to the next, there's a fairly large variance that's well into the double digits between, A capture to B capture. So technology in those situations, I think, is really helping us tell the transparency and truth in the story by bringing quality documentation forward. And rather than looking at it as a way to leverage and maybe limit the billing or the profitability that a restoration company has, in the same challenge, a carrier is also trying to operate in a profitable way. And we have to understand we're all in business together. We all serve the same stakeholder, the property owner, the policyholder. And I think delivering a higher quantity of higher quality work is what's going to really be the secret sauce here for us, using technology to have transparency, to build more credibility and trust, and actually really work together to solve the claim problems that exist today.
Thanks, Brandon. This has been great. I truly could go on for another several hours, probably days. Maybe we'll have to reconnect in the future and go in some more specific directions. But before we close this one off, anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, no, listen, I didn't want to make this about a sales pitch about Homey and who we are. I wanted to share a little bit about who we are and answer your questions. But listen, if anybody's interested in understanding more about Homey, I'd encourage you to visit us at homey.com. And it's HOMEE.com. Everyone says, how do you say that, or what is it? But it's Homey. Pretty fun. I'm enjoying life here. It's as a homie now, which I think is pretty exciting. But listen, I think we're going to do some exciting things out in the industry, and all this technology we talked about. My goal here and the team's goal at Homey is to really be that ubiquitous solution that brings all this great technology together under one software solution, and to really play well with everybody out in the industry. We want to be a supplemental partner to everybody's capacity and constraints, and just bring some positivity to the environment that's out here in the world right now. Everybody's, I think, struggling and so uncertain and unsure. And I think we have an opportunity uniquely to kind of dovetail ourselves into a number of different places in the industry. And we're excited to do that. And, we want to get everyone out there to understand who we are and what we do. And, we're a partner, and our goal is to make lives easier for everybody out here so we can, again, make sure those policyholders are having positive claim experiences and doing it as quickly as possible so that, we can get everybody back to normal, whatever that is today, right?
Great point. Yes. Well, this has been so great, Brandon. Thank you for your time and insight. I do want to call it out one last time. Make sure it's clear. Where can listeners go to learn more about Homey and connect with you if they're curious?
Absolutely. www.homee.com.
Perfect. All right. Sounds like a plan. Thank you again for the interview. Listeners and viewers, for more insights on restoration, remediation, and the people behind it all, visit our website, randrmagonline.com, also Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. And if you haven't yet, please be sure to follow the podcast because that's how you'll keep up with all of our latest episodes. And if you could give us a quick review and rating, we would so appreciate it. We're also on social, on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. So we invite you to follow us there too. This has been R&R's Ask the Expert. Thank you for listening.